might be wrong with you, all because the test is just not that effective. So that's why I'm really trying to make sure, because there are some people that are trying to take advantage of firefighters for these types of things. So where we're going in the future, and we're about done actually. Physicals, everybody kind of knows that. This is what the future will look like. I don't know how far we are off. This is a genomic screen. This is every gene in the human genome. This is a gene-array chip. There's a couple places in the United States right now that are doing cancer gene chip analysis. St. Jude, where I worked in Memphis, is one of the places that was doing this. They were doing it for pediatric cancers. WashU in St. Louis is another fantastic medical facility that's doing this as well. And what they're doing is they're taking blood, healthy tissue, and diseased tissue from every patient that comes in. And they're running screens on all three. And the idea is that they keep entering this into a computer, and what's going to eventually come about is there's going to be a pattern that's detectable to say a certain expression pattern, because each one of these little squares is a gene in your body. There's a protein that's expressed in your body. The color of it depends if it's expressed really highly or if it's expressed really lowly. So if it's black, usually it's like a low expressor. The brighter it is, sometimes it's a higher expressor. So what eventually will happen is that this will all be fed into a computer, and the computer will be, say, based on the expression panel found on these 27 or 30 genes or something, the likelihood of this person having pancreatic cancer is 96%. It's probably very early stage, so then they go in. The idea about this is that we can find this stuff before it's this asymptomatic detection, okay? Very early stage. But we're still about a decade plus away from being there. They're collecting the data right now, but we got to get enough of it where the scientific evidence is behind it. And you have to do it for every single different cancer, because if you only do it for a couple cancers, then that's great, but you can't detect everything. So you have to start collecting this data for every different types of cancer. So it's going to take some time. And then they have to make it basically proof, because this will be a diagnostic tool. It'll have to be approved by the FDA. So then they'll have to run through a clinical trial showing that this is a predictive to a certain degree. It's safe, predictive tool, and it's usable. The benefit of this one thing is that, guess what? The first one of these was done on James Watson, one of the founders of DNA. There's another guy, Francis Crick, and then a really nice woman who didn't get credit, but who also was one of the founders of DNA. Originally, she's the one that determined that chromosome structure. Ended up dying. She got the Nobel Prize later on for something else, but ended up dying of radiation exposure-related cancer. So she kind of got done wrong, because she should have been included in that initial Nobel Prize for the detection of DNA, because it was her electron X-ray crystallography that determined that that's what the structure actually was. And she's the one that kind of solved the whole problem, but she got kind of pushed behind the scene. So when the original James Watson was done, it took 5 years and cost $5 million. Okay? Are you shocked by that, aren't you? Yeah, I know. Sorry. I'm a little bit of a feminist, sorry. 5 years, $5 million. I can do one of these in less than a day, less than $1,000. Within 5 years, these will be less than $100 a piece in about 2 or 3 hours. Okay, so that's why the cost is not going to be surmountable. It's going to be the ability to prove that it's effective in the FDA and show that it's capable of early detection. So. This is an awesome new therapy that just got released. I had friends that worked on this, and this is kind of related to what we talked about earlier about T cells. This is the last bit, and we're done. This is CAR therapy. CAR therapy is chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy. So they take those T cells out of the body we talked about that kill cancer cells. Well, sometimes the cancer kind of find ways to hide those flags, and then the T cells can't find them anymore, and they evade detection, okay? So what they did is they came up with this idea that, well, maybe we can engineer the T cells to find the cancer when they get rid of those flags by finding other ways to detect them. And this was done multiple places. Penn, Dartmouth worked on this where I was there. A couple other institutions worked on this. I was hoping the person would get the Nobel Prize for this year. Probably next year or two they will get the Nobel Prize for this. This will be one of the next Nobel Prizes that gets released. But what happens is they take cells, so this basically was children, all children, B-cell acute lymphocytic leukemia. 83% of these kids, at this case we had 63 total. They're all terminal. They're refractory to treatment. They're multiple relapses, meaning that they're poor responders to any type of current treatment. So to basically be in this study, they had to be stage 4, ready to die, and this was their last option. So they put 63 of them in the study. What they did is they pulled out T cells from their body. They took samples of the cancer that they had. They broke it up and found those little flags that they were looking for, some different ones. And they engineered those cells to express those flags. So they can detect then those cancer cells the opposite way. So they kind of did it a little bit backwards. So they have a separate flag on it that can match that cancer cell, so they will hone right in on those cancer cells. They grow those T cells up in really large numbers, billions of cells, okay? And this is all done by humans. So it's a very labor-intensive process. It takes weeks and weeks. You grow it up. You take the patient, you reduce their immune system a little bit, so you make room for the cells you're putting in. They put them in, and they saw immediately 83% of those kids that were going to die went in complete remission. Okay? The other approximately 17% went into partial remission to slight remission. They figured out since then why the other ones didn't respond, and they've updated some of their strategy for the future to help those respond to a secondary means. So really, really effective. This is the first cell therapy ever approved by the FDA. It was approved in less than a month. I will tell you that that's nothing more than amazing, because trust me, there's one thing the FDA does, and they do well, and it's not move fast. So this was a big, big thing, and when it got approved that quick, people were shocked and excited because it's a really effective. This is being spread to all kinds of other cancers, the same type of treatment. It looks to be as effective in other cancers as well. So this is exciting future types of therapies that we have, that if we end up with cancer, that we have high possibility of having cure rate. So it's just a basic paradigm they use to construct that. Last video, and we're done. Chief Hood was a firefighter in Phoenix for years, left, went and become the chief of Phoenix, of San Antonio Fire Department, had been there for a while, and started having firefighters dying of cancer. They came to this conference as well. In Phoenix, he brought some of the widows of some of the firefighters that had died. They really wanted to discuss the issue, and they made this really nice video and gave to all of us to share, to kind of talk about what we're facing in the fire service right now. So it's just a couple of minutes long, and then you guys are free to go.
This is the final alarm for Lieutenant Casey Nicholas Turk, badge number 2053. May he rest in fraternal peace. All companies please return to selective call. This is the last alarm for firefighter Danny Barrow. This is grade 7 of the San Antonio Fire Department, marked for passing of active duty firefighter Danny Barrow, badge number 1847. Danny was assigned to Engine 16 on the C shift and faithfully served the city of San Antonio for 30 years. He died on Monday, April 25th, after a battle with cancer. Repeating, this is the final alarm for firefighter Danny Barrow. It is with great sadness that the San Antonio Fire Department marks the passing of active duty Lieutenant Todd Woody Woodcock, badge number 2374. Woody was assigned to the training division and Engine 38 on the A shift and faithfully served the city of San Antonio for 18 years. He died on Sunday, June 26th, after a battle with cancer. Lieutenant Woodcock, we will take command from here. Rest in peace.
First heard of Daddy's diagnosis, we went for a colonoscopy, and we weren't expecting the news that we got. When we got the call in
July of 2014, that the blood work from his wellness exam came back abnormal and that he would need to see a hematology oncologist. It was a blow, to say the least.
I remember in that evening, I was home with all 5 kids, and he had gone to the emergency room. He took himself to the emergency room because he had a severe headache, which he never got. And he just thought it was stress. And I found out later he hadn't had a headache for a month. He hadn't told me about that. So they had medicated him and they were going to send him home. And then they decided to do a CAT scan, and that's when they found a brain tumor.
Since I've been here, I've lost recently Danny Vera, Lee Wilcox, Casey Turk. I have other members that are fighting for their lives right now. And so, and like with Danny, I talked to Danny the day he was diagnosed. And so you walk through these episodes with those members. And you lose experience sitting at those kitchen tables and then work a third of their lives with other members in this organization, and then you look up and they're gone.
You know, cancer affects everyone. It's not just the firefighter and their family, but it's also members of the department who are often close friends of the firefighter. It's the community. They've lost someone who has provided service to them and has saved lives.
He was very strong. He was a trooper, of course, maybe the fire. I questioned God, why him? And he got after me. He told me, you don't question God. Things happen for a reason, and this is what we've got to do now. Just take care of it.
I did have a flood of emotions throughout this whole process, but especially in the time of his passing. Grateful for just the support of our fire family. Humbled to know that he meant so many people, and our family means so many people, that so many were willing to drop whatever they had going to come to the hospital and visit with us and see Woody, pray over Woody, help with our daughter. Fear, because you just don't know what the future holds.
Our department, having recognized that we have to provide a box in our organizational chart that is going to take care of the members and is going to actively look at studies, look at science, look at the legal aspects around the country, look at the resources that we can pull in to help us with our issues. I think it's important that we continue to educate politicians, local leaders throughout the region, the community, and the country that cancer is an occupational hazard, just like running into a burning building, a building collapsing on you. It is a hazard of our occupation.
In the fire service, we're used to working together as a team, and that's the same approach we need to take to fight cancer, to get ahead of it, to win. We all have to work together. This is bigger than any one person, any one department. It's going to take the entire fire service to come together to battle this disease.
All right, let me give you my little 4 cover things of what I think the 4 best things that each department can do, the major things that you guys can do to address this. Particulate blocking hoods, number 1. Doing gross decon and personal decon, that's 2 and 3. Second sets of gear is a good number 4. Those things alone, knowing what we know, addressing those issues are great starting points for every department, and then you can move from there. But I think those are the major kind of 4 things that I really see are the major, will make the most impact, the quickest, the most effective things we can do. If you guys have any questions, like I said, I do this not because this is a money-making opportunity for me. I do this because I care about all you. You're all my brothers and sisters in the fire service. I don't want one more person to die that doesn't have to from cancer. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it is. And if I can save that, if I can do something that maybe helps save one person, I'm golden. I've got all the payment I need from that. Okay. So if you guys have any questions, I've got books up here. All this stuff's going to be available digitally for you as well. I have business cards. If you have any questions you don't want to ask in front of everybody, feel free to give me an email or a call. That's my personal phone number and my email. You guys get about half of these wipes this morning, so you can divide them amongst yourselves however you want. I got a bag, so you guys can fight for that, and you can take the other ones in this bag. But yeah, I appreciate your attention. If you guys have any questions, I'll be around for a little while. I'm going to try to get lunch today. I didn't get it yesterday, so I'm going to try to sneak. Dang it. I'm just going to tell you, driving to Bowling Green last night after getting done, I was like, I've got to stop and get something to eat. So.
Guys, on those hoods, did they get their hoods yet?
No, they have not. Yeah.
When you get your hood, put your name on your hood. These are
sound like, so they're not scared. That's the main reason we do all this fire prevention. We don't want them hiding in the closet or under their bed because they think Darth Vader's coming in to get them and take them away or whatever. They're already scared because their house is on fire, there's alarms going off, there's smoke, all these things are going on. Still, feel free to go and let them see, especially if they come here. Have firefighters get in full gear and breathe and talk to them and let them see what it looks and sounds like. Really important. There's nothing wrong with that. Another thing that we did actually instead is some departments bought a special set of gear just to go and take to the schools, so they're not taking anything there. They have a clean set of gear that's just for fire prevention. What we actually have done and other departments have done is we bought the kids sets of turnout gear for like $100 a pop. We bought 5 or 6 of those, and we take those with us to the school, and the kids get to put those on. We bring those back, throw them in the washing machine at the firehouse, clean those, and we got them for the next one. And then this whole issue of they still get to dress up in turnout gear and stuff, and our ability to transmit anything to them is minimized or eliminated totally. But we're known as the good guys, let's be honest. Of all the public service, EMS, still good. Police, sometimes people have issues with, but firefighters, nobody ever complains about firefighters, okay? We're constantly the good guys, so we still got to think about all the kids are looking up to us. All these boys and girls who want to be firefighters are looking up to us, so we got to do what we can to keep them safe and show them, and we got to demonstrate the right way to do things. So if we're doing things one way and saying we're going to do it a different way, we're not practicing what we're preaching. We actually utilize this to bring back our gear from a fire scene. So we throw all of our dirty gear and air packs in the back of a utility truck and bring it back because, again, it's off-gassing. And that way we have extra sets of gear to put on. That's another thing that the NFPA is suggesting is a second set of gear. So your first set, once it's wore and filthy at a fire scene, you can immediately take it back. It can go into a gear extractor. Then you have a clean set of gear to immediately put back on when you go back in service, and you can make runs. So then you're back in service with no type of time down. When you only have a single set of gear, once you wash that gear, guess what? You're 10-10. You can't make interior attack with a wet set of fire gear. So that's one of the things that people have to think about, ways to address that. An Australian study was done in 2011, and this is really a quite interesting study, and probably come across some of the most interesting results of all the studies that we've looked at. This had 162 1,000 firefighters, both male and female, all career types were included, and they looked at two things, the greatest two routes of entry of carcinogens in the bodies of firefighters, okay? The number one route was through lungs, most often because we're not wearing SCBAs through overhaul. The second was through dermal absorption through the skin. The interesting thing about this is that the skin's permeability actually increases. For every 5 degrees your surface temperature of your skin goes up, its permeability increases, absorption ability increases 400%. So imagine us with turnout gear, how much absorption increase we have underneath that turnout gear, okay? Because we're sweating, our body temperature on the surface can go up to 110 because we're actually releasing heat to try to cool down. You know, we're gaining 5-10 degrees, so we're 800% increasing in absorption, for example. And what's the most permeable piece of PPE we wear? It's the one we don't think much about. It's our Nomex hoods. Nomex hoods were not designed to prevent permeability. They were designed strictly to just keep us from burning our ears off, right? The old days, that's how firefighters did it. They went in until the tops of the ears started burning. They're like, all right, that's far enough. We'll stop right there and back our way out. Traditional Nomex hoods are meant just for that purpose. You guys have, I think you've got a copy, he's got one of each. I've got the black one, he's got the white one back here. This is the Majestic. I think all you guys are going to get one of these. These block out 99.9% of all particles from reaching your skin. And this is probably one of the biggest sources of contamination firefighters are facing right now. And these are just 3 different types of them. So they just, and the nice thing about that is too, and we actually, another thing you can potentially do in the future is a hood exchange program. So you have 2 hoods. You have one that when you wear that hood to a fire and you use it and it gets dirty, you turn those in, you get a black hood then that you can use for the next set of rounds until those get cleaned and returned. We carry extras on trucks for that purpose, so we can have, so if you guys have extras, that's a really nice thing to do. You can carry them in command cars, and that way firefighters still have clean hoods to use after. Sorry,
Are you saying those get sent out to clean? We can't clean them?
You can clean those in the gear extractor. It's completely fine. And do you mind, Justin, to flip it inside out so they can see? So this has actually an interior Gore-Tex liner, just like your turnout gear does, and you can actually pull this completely inside out and inspect the liner after you wash it to make sure there's no holes. So it has the capability of making sure you're not getting any type of holes and any type of permeability there. And I think Troutwine brought these for you guys, so. But they're pretty simple, even that, and then you can just kind of shake them out and then they go back to shape. Some of the other ones are made with different materials. Those have the best protection. Like I said, almost 100% complete particle blocking. I always show this picture because it always reminds me of 2 things. Everybody wears their Nomex hoods around their necks like this, of course. This is actually my father-in-law, Glenn, and he teaches classes. He may have taught you guys. He teaches a multicultural class for Spanish-speaking in a lot of different departments throughout Indiana and Kentucky. Like I said, he's left the fire service now. Told you he had cancer. This is chief of Highview, which I've known, believe it or not, since I was 7 years old. He was my Little League coach, and who knew later on we both become firefighters. He's now currently the chief. He's had skin cancer removed. And this is our friend Kevin, who passed away from pancreatic cancer at 35. So the second note about this is that firefighters that are instructors, so they're actually all at Texas A&M doing structural firefighting classes, have even a higher risk of getting cancer than normal firefighters because they're continually having repeated exposures. And what do we do when we do these types of burns? What type of material do we use?
Using Class A for us.
Yeah, hopefully everybody's starting to use Class A's. A lot of people were using particle board before. No. Yes, it produces great heat. It works great in flashover trailers and things like that because it really gets it going. But there's so much carcinogens and glues and stuff like that that it's dangerous. And you guys can pass these other ones around too. You're not going to get any of these other ones, but you can at least look at the other ones. Those are really good. I think Justin said $5 a piece, he'll pass them out, right? Is that what? Yeah. But yeah, so just be aware of that. So the other thing about hoods, so remember I said normal Nomex hoods don't really do any much, okay? So a department took like a hood like we just saw in that video that was partially dirty. They put it in a bag full of 10% Dawn and water, let it set out for 3 hours. That's what came out of that hood, okay? That's how much carcinogen. It didn't look filthy. That looked like a normal kind of semi-dirty hood to us. This is what a clean hood looks like. This is what a brand new one looks like. This is how much contamination and particulate gets inside of that hood. A very nice job there, by the way, Vanna. So the problem is this, is that our standard Nomex hoods only block out about 5%, at the most 25% of particulate. So all that other stuff makes it into our skin. And once it gets to our skin, what did we just say a while ago? That our absorption increases with body temperature, so it is getting into our bodies, okay? Easily. It can go straight through our skin. We already talked about that earlier on. It makes sense now how it's getting in our body. With these advanced hoods, the ones you guys have are not on here, but the ones that you have actually block 99.9% of all particulate, even after 100 washes in the laundry. So when you throw it in with your gear, it's still good for 100 washes, and it's still 100% protective, or 99.9% protective, sorry. So this is the one you guys got. You've got the Gore-Tex brand like you see here. It's 99.9%. It has a Gore-Tex barrier. It's certified thermal protection, so it's got a good heat barrier. Fits good, particulate blocking throughout, and it's durable. There's other hoods available. This is a Firedex hood. It blocks like 95% of particles, and then there's this enhanced hood that's called an Inintech, which is another hood that I like. It blocks about 99.99% of small particles and a little bit less on the larger particles. Your hoods blocks 99.9% of all particles. So you have probably the best particle blocking hood that you can buy as far as total particle blocking capabilities. All right, what does it look like on a normal Nomex hood? So they did a study similar to that study we just looked at in Florida using fluorescent powder. They had firefighters go in, do overhaul. They sprayed them with their fluorescent powder, brought them out, hit them with the light, and this is what they saw. This is the amount of particulate that got through their hoods to their skin, including under their gear on their legs. On the legs is an issue because think about our turnout pants. They do not fit tight around our boots, so we have a lot of room. So when we're crawling around, we get a lot of air movement up and down through our pant legs, so we do get a lot of contamination on our legs. And at this point, there's not a lot of great ways to address that other than taking proper showers and changing clothes and everything after we make working fires. But the hoods will definitely eliminate a large majority of the contamination that we're seeing. You can see again, particulate penetration on the neck, some on the hand, on the belly from doing overhaul. You can see where the sweat will run it down. So this is accumulation of probably exposure from doing overhaul, and probably some drop down from what's coming down from the neck as well. This is what it looks like. This, every hood's a little bit different. This is just a brand new Nomex hood that's really thick that they used. You can see some particulate around the ear. You can see where the strap was for the chin. You can still see particulate around here and in the hair, especially around the ear. Using an enhanced hood, you can see that that's pretty much completely eliminated. There's no particulate that's made it through that hood. All right, I'm gonna work with someone on a study to specifically look at that, because what hasn't been done to complete that circle is, we know all that, but the last little piece that needs to be done is the research needs to be done to show that wearing those hoods, so maybe I'll come to you guys, I don't know, and after you make a fire, I'll start collecting blood and urine samples from you. And what we'll do is we might even rub your face after a fire to see how much contamination you have on your surface. And we'll compare that to a department that doesn't use particle blocking hoods. And we'll see if there's a significant decrease in those toxins in our urine and our blood. And we're pretty sure that there is, based on the initial evidence. But that's kind of one of those areas that's probably, there's other people working on it, but it needs to be completed to kind of complete that circle showing the true effectiveness of this. So this is talking just about washing turnout gear. Usually if your turnout gear has been laundered in an extractor, this is what your levels of carcinogens on there looks like. I didn't do it this time. Inside attack, search and rescue.
District 1 for odor of gas, healthy structure, Running Center, 1027, Youngstown Shopping Center. Being graded 41, District District 1 for an odor gas inside the structure. Awareness Center 1027, Youngstown Shopping Center. Car seats East 10th to Mayhem Lane, MS 1133.
So you wear your gear, first fire exposure, you get approximately 7 to 8 microns per 100 cubic centimeters. And you wear that gear again, so you don't wash this gear after this first fire, and you wear it to the next fire, and that's all it goes up. So it barely goes up a little bit more. Can anybody tell me why do you think your level doesn't go up after that first fire that much? Good job, exactly. I don't have any freebies today, sorry. Justin, bring freebies tomorrow so I can give stuff away. Exactly. It's basically saturated after that first fire. So that's one reason why we want to, we want to wash our gear after every fire, because if all those carcinogens are still in there, we're still being exposed for it that period of time. It's not clear if these affect the gear's ability to protect us. That's unclear at this point still. If it alters its ability to, its heat protection and other things like that. And for years we've been told not to wash our gear too often because what? It wears out quicker, right? I've heard people go from the stories of saying this is all a conspiracy from the gear manufacturers to sell more gear to, what about this? Well, the thing is, the NFPA at this point will tell you this, that the only time you have to replace your gear is when your department looks at it and decides through an inspection that it needs to be replaced, or it's over 10 years after the manufacturer date, okay? I would rather replace gear more often and wash it and decrease our exposure, and I think most residents will. We might have to address that through increasing revenue or something for the fire departments, but that's probably what's going to have to happen, because we're going to have to wash our gear every time we have an exposure, because if not, instead of worrying about replacing that gear and it getting wore out after so many washes, which we don't, what's going to eventually happen, I'm going to tell you, based on what I've heard on the inside, is that they're probably going to come up with instead of having like each department determines when the gear's no longer, it'll probably be this many washes before your gear needs to be replaced. Is probably what it'll eventually come out through the NFPA. At this point, again, it still says it's up to each department to determine when that gear needs to be replaced, and or if it's 10 years after the manufacturer's date. But that's what I've kind of heard in the grapevine that might come about in the future. So just be aware of that, but that's okay. The other advantage to this is if you get second sets of gear, that makes it that much easier, because each set of gear is getting washed half as much, so it'll last just as long. So both sets of gear, might last you for an entire 10 years, and you'll get new gear replacement after that. Other things might come out anywhere with gear that require replacement sooner, because they might come out with new technology or come out with new safety features that they want people to implement immediately versus as just a suggestion. So just be aware of that. Firefighter decon. I know you guys do this, so I won't go through a whole lot. I'll talk about kind of what the decon I developed is, and pretty much how it's probably very similar to what you do. We have a marked decon station about 50 to 75 feet away from anyone. Usually it's in a neighbor's front yard that's not home. We set up a tarp at that decon station. The officer will instruct the engineer to set up a decon area. They will stretch a tarp out. They will bring a hose line. They will bring a bucket that has all of our decon materials in it. And they will bring everybody's shoes, because we take our shoes with us now on the fire truck instead of leaving them at the station. And then what will happen is when we go to decon, we basically wash from head to toe, soapy water and scrub, low pressure water, 20 psi or less. Something that, the reason why we do that is because we don't want to push stuff into our gear. We're basically washing stuff off our gear. Dawn soap is what we use, 1 to 10 diluted. You can get it in a spray bottle. You can get it in one of those pumps like they do for pests, like pest spraying and stuff like that. Works great. They're like $8 at Lowe's or Home Depot. And it really pressurizes it. Get your soap out there. You're going to scrub them from head to toe, get every area under there, between legs, you name it, boots, and then when you're done with that, you're going to spray them off. They're going to do the other person. We do team decon, so everybody that goes in together comes out and decons each other. The last person gets deconned. That person then will move to the end of the tarp. They will drop their bunker gear there completely. They will basically then go ahead and pick up their shoes, put those on, and they're done. That gear will get taken back to the station in a separate vehicle, and based on that, they will move about and do whatever needs to be done. Gear extractors will be used. It'll be washed and cleaned, whatever might happen there. Okay. How effective it is. Wet decons removes about 90% of those carcinogens, those PAHs that we find in our gear. So it's highly effective to use wet decon. Now, in the middle of January and February in Indiana and Kentucky, is it going to be fun to do wet decon? Absolutely not. You can do dry decon, where you can use a dry brush and just wipe, basically scrub everything dry on them off. It's better than nothing. It removes about 20 to 30% of the contaminants off that firefighter, but it's not as effective as wet decon. So departments as a whole have to determine if they're willing, because you do get a little bit of wet during wet decon because it does get down here under your shirt, but it's really, really effective. So when you go back to the firehouse to wash your gear, there's very little contaminants that have to be extracted and your gear gets really clean. So that's an advantage of that. Like I said, you can make your own, you can whatever. You can make them for less than 20, 30 bucks. Heck, you can most of the time find this stuff around. These are made by Rescue Wipes, which are now owned by Hero Wipes, which is what you guys are going to get. They sell the kit for 35 bucks. It comes with a foxtail brush and all the stuff in there. These little bottles of Dawn soap you buy at the dollar store all day long for $1. Work perfect. This is the best thing to use. Think about it, when we have an oil spill or anything like that, what do they use to clean the wildlife with? Dawn. And the reason why they use it is because it's really effective at removing hydrocarbons from substances. It pulls it out, okay? So it's really, really effective at doing that. And it's gentle on our gear, so it doesn't damage it, it doesn't void any type of warranties or anything like that. And that's why it's great to use that, and it's inexpensive as well. We'll talk about that in a second. Decon wipes. You guys are going to get lots of decon wipes today. I brought 250, so there's 125 of them for everybody here today, and I've got some bags you can put them in, boxes and some other bags. Decon wipes are not the same as baby wipes. I got asked this again yesterday. They're different. These decon wipes, these are called Hero Wipes. They're certified to be toxic-free. Believe it or not, all baby wipes are not toxin-free, believe it or not. Some of them are made in China and other places like that where there's no requirement to verify that there's no toxins in baby wipes, which is quite scary because we use them on our children and we never think anything about that. The other thing about these wipes is that they have surfactants in them. A surfactant is basically a type of soap, much like Dawn, that allows to pull hydrocarbons away from things. So it actually pulls stuff out of the skin versus wipe smear. The other thing with wipes is a lot of wipes have wax in them, paraben, and that will seal in. So if you have any type of contaminant on your skin, it will seal it into your pore, basically. Anything with aloe and stuff like that you don't want to use. Anything with alcohol you don't want to use. And they're really not meant to do what we want to do. And these are specifically meant to pull stuff away from the skin, and they're really effective. The cost, compared to baby wipes, is not any different really. So people are like, well, it's just a fancy baby wipe. Well, the cost is, so 250 of these right here, which would last your department hopefully for a pretty long time for just the 3 or 4 trucks that are here. You know, that's quite a few of them. 60 to 80, well, I get a discount on them, but they're about $60 to $80 for that many of them, and they come in a bag. And they're individually, this is the other big advantage, they're individually wrapped. What happens when you have a huge bag of baby wipes and you leave it in your car over the summer? Dries out within 2 days. They found that out quite quick, that doesn't work. That's the other advantage of having these individually wrapped, and that kind of causes the cost to go up a little bit more because they're individually wrapped. But these are really, really, really effective. So, I mean, you can use them wherever you want. They're not going to hurt your eyes. They're not going to hurt anything else. This is a different company. This is Action Wipes. This is one of the owners of Action Wipes, and he'll demonstrate kind of how to do personal decon after you do gross decon at the scene. You're going to open it up. You're going to do your eye area. You're pulling everything away from the midline of your face to the outsides. All right. You're going to blow your nose and clean that. At that point, you might want to throw this away and get another one. That's why there's multiples. You can use as many as you need. Clean your ear area, because we saw a lot of contamination in that area. All around your collar, about an inch or two below the collar line, all the way around. Through your hair, whether if you have it or not, it doesn't matter. Still use this, because we're trying to clean the skin, okay? And then get any debris out. Do your hands. Make sure you take your rings off and watches if you're wearing those, and set those aside. He doesn't do that, which I wish he would have, but he doesn't. He's still wearing his watch and his ring. You're going to do from your fingertips and your nail beds all the way to your armpits, okay? So he's doing his fingernails there to his armpits, all right? This was actually a video originally, and they had to make it into a PowerPoint slide because they're harassing him the entire time. And then the final thing you're going to do is you're going to do your lower abdomen right above your pubic area, because, again, we talked about overhaul. Stuff falls down in there, and that's where we're trying to eliminate that before we get a lot more contamination in that area. So you're just wanting to hit those areas really well with the decon wipes. Indiana, you guys have this, and I already talked to people here on your department. You guys will probably hear more about this in the future. This is an exposure tracking system that's downloadable on your phone, and it's a digital way for you to record every time you make a fire and you have an exposure. And the nice thing about that is if you have to go to the state of Indiana and say, I have cancer, you can take a flash drive with all those exposures on them and hand it to them and say, you know, if they say I need a specific exposure, you can say take your pick, or you can print out, you know, a couple hundred reams of paper and say take your pick. You know, I don't know how that'll work out, but it's a really great way of having the digital proof that you've had exposures and what type of exposures you've had. And this also includes fire and hazmat and EMS exposures as well. Yeah.
Did you say if you smoke, dip, or anything like that, you're exempt from that?
The state of Kentucky gives you a 10-year exemption. Now, I don't know what Indiana's state law says on that, if it's 5 years or what, how long you have to be smoke dip, but all alcohol, tobacco products, they basically eliminate certain people for periods of time based on usage. It doesn't mean if you used it for 30 years, if you've quit for 5 years and the state says you only have to be 5 years without it, you're good. But there are exemptions on that, so that's why you have to look at your state law and see what the requirements are. And the only reason behind that is because they know that people who smoke and use tobacco products have increased risk of cancer, so it's hard to discern if the cancer is from that or from on the job. Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, with my friend Kevin, he dipped. People with pancreatic cancer don't get that from dipping, so I mean that's kind of obvious, but he was excluded from the law. Second of all, pancreatic cancer was not covered by the state of Kentucky. It's not one of the cancers that's covered, so he would have not been covered either way. But these digital records are a great way. This will become the new universal precautions. Years ago, I laughed because, you know, Charlie Regal was a guy he just died of colon cancer recently in the state of Kentucky. He was my EMT instructor and a fellow firefighter that was worked right near me in a neighboring district in Louisville. And he told me when he very first became an EMT in the 80s, the old guys that he worked with back then would tell him every Friday they used to have contests where they would see who would come back the bloodiest, and each truck would throw up a couple bucks, and whoever came back the bloodiest won all the money in the pool that day. Okay? And Charlie, you know, in the 80s, was like, are you crazy? You know, hepatitis, HIV, all this stuff, but they didn't know about that stuff back then. The same thing with cancer. We didn't know about this stuff until the last couple of years. So I think what will happen is we'll see this become a new universal precaution in the fire service. And it won't happen overnight. I don't expect tomorrow every one of these things we talked about today will be in place. We're going to take steps, baby steps to get there. And that's one of the keys to kind of get to a safe forward motion on that. You need to know your presumption law. Like I said, Indiana's is a little confusing. If you have questions, definitely get a hold of your union reps. Definitely get a hold of state legislators, because if they're the ones that signed it, they better be able to explain it to you, okay? The union should also be able to explain it to you. I was going to print it out today, and like I said, I got home at 1 last night. I just didn't have time. I'll print it out for tomorrow, though, because I don't have to go anywhere tonight. And we can look through it together. It's kind of wordy, and it's not straightforward, to be honest with you. The Kentucky one is a lot more straightforward than the Indiana one, because they talk about classification of carcinogens and things like that, which is huge list. I pulled up the list of those, and there's hundreds of them listed. So I don't know if you have to make direct connections between your cancer and carcinogens or what, which is not really possible. So again, it might be something you'll have to start addressing at a state level with the union and with local legislators, saying we need to change this and just have this a presumption bill, meaning that it's presumed if I get cancer and I get one of these cancers that I should be covered. So. Okay, how do we detect cancer? This is kind of one of the important parts that I like to talk about, because I talked about a lot of things we can't do. Yearly physicals and blood work are critical. If you get a yearly wellness exam here, fantastic. We got one. The departments often spend somewhere between $400 to $500 a person to do a wellness exam. Okay? Critical to do that. What I actually do is I book in mine, so I get my wellness exam in the fire department usually late summer, fall, August, and then 6 months later I schedule my yearly health exam with my doctor to do my yearly wellness exam with her, and then she makes me come see her once a year because I have acid reflux. So to get my refill on my prescription, she makes me come in and see her once a year, just because once you get above 40 they want to see you once a year just to make sure everything's copacetic. So I do that. The cool thing is then I have blood work. I have a complete physical twice a year, so they can look at all the numbers, compare if there's any differences. I also take her a list of all the cancers that firefighters are known to have increased risk of. And I believe I gave people a copy yesterday. If not, I'll print out some tonight and bring them tomorrow. There's a list of all the 3 major studies that has all those cancers, and you're free. I made these up myself. You're free to distribute to all members. You can put it digitally online if you want, because I'm also going to give you these books at a digital format so people can access those anytime they want. Give those to your physicians. Let them know what you have increased chances of. I would tell you right now, the International Association of Fire Chiefs has made major changes in what they suggest for firefighter physicals in this last year. Earlier screening for things like colon cancer, earlier screening for things like prostate cancer, okay? Because we weren't screening for those things until we were 50. We weren't screening for, well, you know, those things until later in life. We weren't doing colonoscopies. We weren't doing anything until later in life. But knowing that we have such an increased chance of doing that, those numbers are going to start dropping. You know, we might see colon cancer screening beginning at 35, okay? Same thing with prostate exams. You know, we may not have to do prostate exams at that age, but we can at least do PSAs at the age of 30. And if there's any high numbers, then follow that up with a prostate exam. The problem with prostate exams, to be honest with you, with the guys in the room, the problem with that is that sometimes you can have inflamed prostate and it has nothing to do with cancer. And sometimes your numbers can be kind of crazy. So I talked to a guy last night and yesterday too, who had like biopsies after biopsies, and they finally caught cancer after about 10 years, but his numbers would just go continually up and down. And some people are just like that. So especially because we saw there's such an early predisposition for prostate cancer among firefighters, testicular cancer, breast cancer, we want to do self-exams for sure. That's the easiest way still. I don't care what the news media says about, you know, you hear back and forth about breast self-exam is not the best way to do it. Get your yearly mammograms, do breast self-exam, do testicular self-exams. If there's anything abnormal, don't wait around. Go see the doctor. It's better to go in them to say it's nothing, you're worried about nothing, than putting it off and it be something, okay? Really pushing for early detection on the things we can detect. So you'll see, I'll give the chief a copy of the International Association of Fire Chiefs' new suggested. They really, I mean, includes things like, really a lot of things like the colon screening. The screenings that we know that can detect cancer early are really being brought up to earlier ages because of the amount of exposure we're seeing. And then they're adding in some other things. So the cost of physicals will probably go up in the next couple years because we'll try to do more early detection. I will be honest with you, there are some cancers we cannot do early detection for. So the ones we can, we definitely want to do early detection for. There's other cancers, pancreatic cancer, I can't do early detection for that. Lung cancer, not always early detection. We do pulmonary tests every year. I'm assuming you guys do pulmonary tests every year in your physicals too. Not always capable of finding when there's lung cancer. until people start coughing up blood, until you have pain bad enough you have to go to the hospital and they're trying to figure out if your colon or something is going on or what's going on with that, or if it's your pancreas or whatever, and then come to find out you have a tumor. That type of thing is not what we want to deal with. We want to be proactive and try to catch as much stuff going forward as possible. I would avoid, there are some companies out there that are targeting firefighters to do these types of tests. These are called DR70 and CA125 tests. These are cancer antigen tests, and they're commonly used by physicians, and we actually, in the laboratory that I work in, we commonly use those to monitor people that actively have cancer. However, if I give those to someone that doesn't have cancer and it comes back positive, that doesn't mean that person has cancer or not. And that's what they're trying to suggest that they use them for, as a diagnostic tool, and they are not a diagnostic tool. They're cheap, they're $100 a piece. This one tests for like 7 different types of antigens, this one tests for 12. You get the false positive and false negative rates are so high on those that pretty much everyone I've talked to in the medical community and the research community has agreed that we're not going to support the use of these because they're just not there. The chances of me giving somebody the test, coming back positive, thinking you have something, waiting 4 weeks to go see a doctor, you get in there and you're completely healthy, and then I've subjected you to either a CT scan or a PET scan or something. The cost involved with that, potential radiation you might get exposed to, plus those weeks of you worrying that something